Let's see how to make a quick timer dial in Premiere Pro. I'm all about answering viewers' questions and comments, especially when they need help. On one of my videos, I did this quick little Premiere Pro timer on a card, and it spins and it counts down, and somebody asked me how you do that, and I'm going to show you how to do that. No plugins, no BS. It's quite simple, and maybe you can apply this to your own video editor. Let's go see how to do that. Okay, here we are in the editing room, the editing space. I am going to show you a couple of things. The first one is, if I'm going too fast for you, use the pause button on the video. If I go too slow, people who are fast, it's going to irritate them. If I go too fast, people who are slow, it's going to irritate them. So just use the pause video down below this video. The other thing is, I set things up very simply and very basically. I don't like doing these tutorial videos and having, 16 different panels and things up in Premiere Pro. That may be okay for people who are more experienced in using Premiere Pro, but I like to set it up so I'm only have panels and things open that new and beginning filmmakers learning to use Premiere Pro and learning to do these techniques can do without being overwhelmed. So I'll show you the panels and how I set them up. Again, press the pause on the video if you need to set up your panels that way and want to follow along that way. Otherwise, let's just get started. Okay, here we are in Premiere Pro. Now I have it set to the editing workspace. Workspaces, there's when you're doing color correction, there's effects, there's audio editing and all that stuff. This is normally the normal workspace you get in here. I personally don't like it when I'm doing these tutorials, and especially when I'm doing quick episodes, because there's too much stuff in my way. What I use is what's called the BFM tutorial workspace, and I'll show you more in a moment. There's my project window up in the left. Here's effects, which we will be using, and here's effects controls on how do you control things in the timeline. Here's the timeline. I've collapsed my tools so they're over on the left. I usually use keyboard commands. I like to see what the audio is doing, and this is my workspace. I may go in and open up Essential Graphics, which will pop up over here, so I can get to those. We'll leave those out of there for right now. We will be doing that. If you want to set up a similar workspace to the way mine looks right now, go ahead and just start closing things. I'll show you how to do that quickly. I know I've covered this in other videos. I don't want all this stuff down here. I want this project window. So I'm just going to drag that up there. I don't care about the source. I do want controls. I don't care about the mixer. I don't care about the metadata. There's not very much else that I want to do up here. I'm going to end up closing all these other panels and closing this web browser panel and being done. There's my tools, collapsing those down. The only thing I'm missing right now, I have this and effects controls. I do want to see my effects. That pops up down here where I don't want it. I'm just going to drag it right up here. Now we have that, that, and that. I usually keep this pretty much like this to see my stuff. I like having a lot of area to see what I'm editing. And here's my timeline. If you set it up like this, go into here, workspaces, and say save new workspace. And then you can title it whatever you want, my workspace, John's workspace, my mom's workspace, whatever you want to do. And that's workspaces, and that's how you get there, and that's how you can follow along. Like I said, pause the video if you want to do that. My workspace is just set up for tutorials, pretty much similarly to that. Actually, I don't like that meter over there down so far, so I'm going to change that. Come up here to the workspace, and I'm going to save the changes to this workspace. Okay, let's get started. So the first thing I want to do is I want to be in this project area. There's nothing in here right now. I'm just going to create a new sequence. A new sequence is just something that allows you to start. In other words, it's the main level thing, and you drop video in there and everything else. For this particular example, I'm just going to use a 1080. You can go through and flip through all these different options. I just want basically a camera type thing at 1080. We'll do 30 frames a second. It's actually, I believe, 29.97, which is fine. If you wanted to do something else, for this example, let's do 24.
I click it, it creates a new sequence. I could have named it there. I don't like that name, so let's call this dial tut. I just click on it, hit return. We're in dial tut. We get our timeline. There's nothing on there. The first thing I want to do for the background, just so we have something to see as we're creating this dial, I've covered this in another one video. I'm not going to go through and explain this whole thing right now. You can see that other video. I'll have a card come out or something like that. I'm just going to create a quick background for us to see something on which we're creating this dial. Go to here, go to color matte. Takes on the aspect of the time and everything else. Okay. It's going to ask us what color. It doesn't matter what color for now. I'm just going to create white. We'll just call it color matte. Now I'm going to drag this on my timeline. Let's just drop it right there. And I'm just going to expand it. It doesn't matter. It's like a it's like a picture. It just goes on forever. I don't want to do this just on white. I'm going to go into effects and I'm going to look for GRAD. I'm going to look for this 4 color gradient. You've seen this in my other videos. If you're already there, you can just skip to the next part of the video. I'll put some time markers in the video. We're going to grab this 4 color gradient. We're going to slap it on there. We're going to get this whacked out psychedelic 70s looking stuff that we can do something on and we can see how it affects. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create this timer. I don't have any video to put this on, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to create right here transparent video. What's transparent video? Transparent video is just basically video that doesn't show up. If I put this on top of here, you're not going to see anything. So that's cool. It allows us to construct things and do things. If I had created a black video, let's create a black video for a second and put it on top, you'll see we get black. So transparent video basically allows you to create something that you can build on. So now we have our transparent video on top, and this is where we're going to be creating our timer. If you look in effects, you type in time, you'll end up seeing this time code. Now time code goes through, we're going to use this as our timer. That just basically says, hey, we're going to go along and we're going to count things up, etc. And you'll notice it starts at 59. It's a little whacked out even though it's at 0. We're going to go into this, see we have the transparent video that we put this effect on. We're going to go into effect controls. Now on effect controls, you'll see this time code. There's a lot of stuff on here, yada, yada, yada. Don't worry about it. Right now, it's saying I want a time code to the media that I'm using. What I want to do is I want to do it to the clip being itself. So now we're at 0. So when we go down to here and we're at 327.19, we're at 327.19. Well, you're wondering, well, how the heck does the time code have anything to do with anything? Well, you may be counting frames, you may be counting seconds, you may be counting minutes plus seconds, hours, whatever. We're just going to be counting seconds in this demo. You'll be able to see what I'm doing here. This little marker doesn't belong there. So we come over here, that's the field symbol, just take it off. Now we have a little counter in here. Well, how do you use that? First thing we're going to do, since we're counting seconds, is we're going to take all this other junk out. Well, can you do that on here? Well, not really. It just takes a little finesse. What we're going to do is these guys up here, create ellipse mask, create 4-point polygon mask, that's a square, and then a freeform mask. We're just going to create a polygon mask. Just click on a square, and you'll notice everything disappears. That's because this mask on this transparent video is only showing what's here. We drag this down here, voila, look at there. There is our timecode guy. Now I'm going to make this, let's go to 200%. Scroll this down. There's other ways to do this, but there it is. Now people have problems with this because they start trying to drag these things and it gets all morphed out and weird and everything else. What you can do is you can select, there's one point, there's the other point. See how those turn blue? And then I can use my arrow keys or shift arrow to move it a lot. I just want seconds. So I'm going to come over here maybe right about there. Now you'll notice this fadey thing, that is what's called the feather. I don't want feather. So over here on this feather, I'm just going to turn that to 0. Feather be gone. Now we're going to come over here. We're going to click this other side. You can also just click this point and this point. And then again, I'm going to left arrow, shift left arrow. I'm going to get this over to here till all I see is that number. Now these numbers move around depending on the font that it uses. It uses its own font. You can't really change the font at this point. So you kind of want to scroll up. You see that? Look at that. You see that little colon came in there? So what we're going to do is we're going to move this over, and we're just going to use the arrow keys this time. Cut out those. And we'll scroll through. It looks like everything's okay. Now obviously this is at 0 and it's coming up, and when it gets to, it's going to wrap around because it's getting to 2 seconds 17. We don't care because we're doing a short timer. So now we got our timer set up. It looks great. You can mess with other things in here. You can mess with the opacity of this thing. You can mess with whether it's inverted. That's whacked out. You can move it all around. You can position it. You can do whatever you want to do. You can change the size of this thing over here. You can change the opacity of it and make it black like that. We might do that. But that's pretty much it. We've now created a timer and it's going to count up. We're probably not going to count up very far. But for now, that's okay. Let's click out of there. And now we have a little timer. And as we play, this thing is counting up. 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 7 seconds, 8 seconds, 9 seconds, 10, 11, 12. Oh, did you notice that? Just a little bit more over there at 11. Right there. So we're going to click on that again. We're going to click on the mask that we made. Again, we're going to grab these 2 dots over here. We're just going to move them over maybe 1, 2 clicks. And it's gone. It doesn't cut off any of the letters. And we're good to go. So now we got something that counts up. Let's count up to, let's say 10. Yeah, so we'll just basically grab these, select both these. Let's move these all down here. And I'm using the plus key. This is to the left of the backspace key to increase the timeline. You'll notice it's selected here. I'm upping the timeline like that. That zooms the timeline in. That works pretty well for me. I'll take that. So now I have my timeline. It goes from 0 to whatever. Now notice if I move this thing over to here, it still starts at 0. And the reason why, as I showed you, is we set this timecode source to the clip itself. In other words, wherever the clip starts is 0. Let's undo that. So we have a little timer. It's going to count up to 10 seconds. Now, let's go over here. You'll notice that we have our sequence. We'll note there's our color mat. The black video is an example. I'm going to get rid of that. Delete. You probably won't have that in there. So we have a color mat, and we have the transparent video, and that's pretty much it. So let's go over to Window and open up Essential Graphics. We may not need that. Click on Edit. And we're going to click on this. I'm sorry you can't really see that. Maybe I'll grab this and move this over to here when in the edit. The problem is I have a really wide screen and I've cut it down so you can see it. What I'm selecting over here is I am selecting over here an ellipse. I select an ellipse and I get this thing. I don't know why they don't allow you to create this thing square. Maybe there's some key command I don't know of. So now I have this selected, as you can see. That's the ellipse. I'm going to turn that. See the fill? I can either click here, turn that to black, click OK, and now it's black. I can also use this little dropper. Like I could use this on any of these elements. I could take this dropper and I can select anything. I'm going to hit escape because for now I want black. Now let's just make this thing somewhat square. Yeah, let's do like that. We'll make it square like that. And this is the anchor point. The anchor point is where do I come from? You'll see why in a minute. Just kind of put that in the middle right there. I'm going to add an outline to this just to add a little pizzazz, and let's set this to some sort of yellow. Let's set this to yellow, and we'll increase right here. You can increase the size of this thing, right? Let's just get it right about there, maybe 3. Now, I always suggest when making graphics or when making any of these widgets or things, I always suggest making the thing as big as possible and then scaling it down later, because it allows you to work a lot easier if you're working in this little tiny space first. Then if you want to increase the size or whatever, it's kind of a pain. This way you make the size bigger and then you can scale it down and it looks a lot better. Now this little anchor point, we're going to do things around that. One thing you can do in Premiere Pro 2020 is you can go to View and hit Control-R and put Show Rulers. There's Show Rulers, and you'll notice I have this selected. And you'll notice when I click on the object, it has this little line here and has this little line here. Well, if I like Photoshop, if I drag this over, I can set that line there. Looks like I already have some stuff there, and I can drag this line here. Let's get rid of this guy by dragging it off. That's the center of my circle. Click on this little dot here, and let's put that basically in the center of the circle. So now I've got my thing selected. I've got my anchor point on there. Using Control semicolon, you can turn these on and off if you want. I'm going to turn them off for right now. So what we've got is, we've got this thing on here. Now obviously we've hidden our little timer. Where's our little timer? Let's put the timer on top. Oh, there she be. And there's our little timer right there. I'm going to move this down here, make everything just nice and pretty. I'll grab both of these. I'm going to move them down. This is video 1 track. The way you move one or multiple tracks down is you hold the Alt, I believe it's Command on the Mac, and you hit the down arrow, and it'll move them all down. Up arrow, down arrow. Notice how it went all the way down and just killed my other one. So you gotta kind of be careful with this. Let's undo that. So we're gonna move these down, 1, 2. Everything looks copacetic. You'll notice we're counting here, right? Now the next thing I wanna do is I wanna play with this timer here on our transparent video. Now we can move the position of this thing around here, which is fine, but look what's happening. Because that's where we created this thing. I usually, once I create these objects, I don't mess around in here anymore much. I just collapse this and I use the standard motion. And I just move this thing up to where I want it. Maybe over here. Now notice when I scale it, remember the anchor point? It's scaling around that anchor point. Let's undo that. So just for fun, I'm going to put the anchor point right there by the numbers. So now when I scale, it goes around the numbers. So we have this giant thing going here. It goes through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, etc. Looks like we went to 15 or whatever. Now, so we've got this timer going. Let's check it out. Now, look at the fact that the transparent video is on top with the timer. The graphic that I created, which is basically a shape, we're just going to rename that background circle, just to keep things tidy. That's second. And of course, we have this guy. We've got our psychedelic background. We got our shape, which is round. And we have this guy, which is like that. Now, we're just going to use a very simple effect over here. If you come over here and you look under video transitions, you're going to see a wipe. And what we want is we want a clock wipe. So you're not going to see much if I drag this thing to here and just try and drag it on here. It's a transition. Now a transition goes from a beginning or at the end or between clips. We're going to add this to the beginning. So I'm going to go to the beginning, because if I add this to the beginning, you're just barely going to be able to see it. There's that thing. Let's undo that. Let's hit the plus key so we can see a lot more and add this clock wipe. So now we have this transition, and look what it's doing. It's wiping the clock around like that. So given this time from where it starts to this time where it ends, that's the clock wipe. Thing I don't like is I don't like our little counter here. See how it has that background that's sitting there. Let's go back up to our video up here, our effects controls on our transparent video, where our time code is. You can also turn effects on and off doing this. Let's come down here. Now it's saying the size, the opacity. You'll notice the opacity is for its background. I'm going to turn that all the way down to 0 because I don't want that little black box like that. Looks kind of funky. Okay, now we're getting someplace. We come along. That's cool. Life is good. Okay. Now you'll see when I play this thing, it's at 0. And then it hits 1. If you want to start at 0, that's okay. I would probably start at 1, possibly 1 second. So all you need to do to change that, it's a lot more than this tutorial than I expected it, is there's this thing called offset. And when you change the offset, it changes how far this thing goes. Let's reset that back to 0. We're going to set this to 24 frames a second. Don't want to confuse you. We're going to set that to 1. So now when I start, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Let's do something with this back thing here. We're going to turn the opacity of the time code, not of the mask. Let's close that. The opacity of the time code, which is his background, we're going to turn that off. So that's gone. So then it goes around and it does this thing like this. Maybe I want to go backwards. Let's crush this guy down to here, and that's where we're going to end. We're going to have 1, 2, 3, and we're going to go to 10 seconds. Now, we could come in here and probably move this out to about 10. It's going to flip right there. And there we go. So we got this thing rolling along till 10 and then it ends. Now what we want to do is possibly instead of counting up, we want to count down. Well, if you click on something, right click on it, and you say it's under speed and duration for flipping things backwards, you notice you don't get it. This is because it's transparent video. It's not quite sure what's going on, and it's a simple solution. What we do is we create what's called a nest. A nest simply says the following. If I select all these elements and I click nest, okay, create me a new sequence and put all those in there. Let's undo that. We're only going to nest this 10-second countdown. We go through, nest, we're going to call it counter nest. You'll notice it creates that new sequence up here. We right click, we hit speed and duration. Now we can flip it reverse speed. Click OK. Now we're going to get reverse speed. Now we're counting from 10 down to 0, and then we're done. Let's just keep things tidy here. There we go. Now we have a dial on there. Now I really like the way this is looking. I think that possibly what I would do, see it's counting down. Now you can do other things with this, like for instance you could do a border color. I could go in here and I could simply, let's grab this dropper and let's pick this yellow again. So now I have a yellow border, and you'll notice, set this to 5. You'll notice I get this border. It does some whacked out things. You can really have some fun things with this, doing this like this. Personally, it's the size of it. There's other ways to handle that. I probably wouldn't do that. So let's turn it off, but I just wanted you to be aware that you can put a border on there, and let's turn that off. Okay, we got our thing. We got it counting down. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, how do we control this wipe to match the seconds? It's very simple. I'm going to double click on this to expand this. When I click on this, I can obviously see these little handles here moving back and forth. When I click on the clock wipe, you'll see a different kind of handle, and that's the length of this thing. Let's say I drag it all the way down there. Hey, look at that. Now we're getting an entire clock thing going on here, which is cool. It hits 1, boink, it's done. Now, if that's the way you want to do it, that's one way to do it. Another way to do this, because notice this is white back here and it looks a little funky. The other thing we can do is we can just add another layer in between all this that is basically a circle for this little number. In fact, let's clap this down by double clicking. We know on here we already have this big circle sitting up here. Let's go ahead, let's move this up. I'm going to Alt up key that. Then I'm going to take and I'm going to click on here and I can copy and paste this, but the easiest way to do this is Alt drag. And I have a copy. Can't really see I have a copy because it's the same thing. Let's take off this clock wipe. And notice you've just covered up the clock wipe. Okay, cool. What we're going to do is we're going to take this guy, which where we created this ellipse, right? And we're just going to scale this guy down to encapsulate the numbers like that. So now we have this other cool effect. That's kind of cool. You know, I'm kind of digging that. I didn't think it was going to turn out that way, but I'm digging that. So now we got this clock effect. It's counting down. It's kind of cool. Now if I were using this, I would, now that I've done it all big screen and everything else, now I have all the elements I need to make this thing and to stick it on any video I want with my countdown. You could certainly go into the nest. You could certainly increase the values. You could certainly tailor all this the way you want. I'll let you play with that on your own. But we have this cool little counter. Now let's say the counter that we wanted to use, we're going to stick up here in the corner, or we want to copy and paste all this crap and use our little 10-second counter every time. We'll encapsulate that into a nest. The counter. And now we have our counter. Now when we move it around, we can put it anywhere on the screen. We can move it up and down. We can do all sorts of stuff with this thing. And that's why I created this full screen. Now let's say I'm sitting here talking or something's going on and I want to create this little counter and just stick it up here. No problem. Zoom it down, move it over here, move it up here, move it over there, and away your counter goes. Your counter's working. Things are cool. It's doing our 10-second countdown. And that works. Let's take a look at this at full screen. It won't do this. It's a derezzing and doing some weird stuff. That's just my current computer trying to be nice to me and not kill me. Boom. Counter gone. That's how you create a counter in Premiere Pro. It's pretty simple. The nice thing about it is if you take this counter and you use it somewhere else, Alt drag it, you got another counter over here, or simply copy it using the clipboard, or right click, copy it, and paste it into your other project. You can also render this little counter and do it out. Now here's another thing you can do. Let's say we're not counting seconds. Let's say somebody's going 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's really easy, and since we have a nest, we can do the following. We can either go to the speed and duration, and we can change this speed here, 50%, make it longer or shorter. I'll show you how to do that. Now that's made it longer. It's going to take a long time. Let's go over to here. I'll show you a much easier way to do that in a minute. Let's go the other way and let's collapse this thing down. Let's make this thing, let's make it 13 seconds long. Boom, look at how small it got. And now it's going to ramp through there quickly. Undo that. The other thing you can do instead of going through all that is there are keyboard commands for all these. These do different things. This is the rate stretch tool. In other words, go through and set the speed or the duration of this thing. Instead of typing it in and messing with this, just use the rate stretch tool. You can click on that. You can also use R. Click on that. Let's say we're on the regular arrow. If I come over here, watch what happens when I press R. It selects the rate stretch tool. Same deal. You grab the end of this, you make it small, super fast counter, or you could take it and stretch it and make it really, really long. And there you go. It's a simple way to make a counter in Premiere Pro. Once you do this and spend the time doing this, you can play with all these elements. If we go into this nest, remember we just scaled this thing down, you go into this nest, all your elements are the same. You can increase things. We could go into here. Let's go into here and do something. Let's say we go into our background circle, and let's say we decide to make this 10 pixels. Boom. Bigger arrow, bigger thing. And let's say we go into that other circle we make, and let's also increase that to 10 pixels. So we can play with this and move things around. And when we go back to our final, you'll notice the yellows are much bigger. I guess I shouldn't put that on yellow. Let's move this over to where you can see this stuff. Let's move it down into the blue. There you go. That's how you create a timer in. You can do all sorts of things with this. The way I did it was I created a completely separate thing and stuck this timer in here. I might as well go do that since this is a long, crazy video anyway. You can stop here and bail if you want. Let's go through and just create something to encapsulate our little timer right here on the screen. Again, I always do these things large and then scale them down. So we're going to create this. We're going to say time until something. Well, that didn't look good. Something. And I don't like that font. Let's use my, I don't know. Let's use Bibus. Bibus is good. So there's time until something. Click on here. We'll just kind of stick this guy up here for right now. Let's add a background to this guy. Rectangle. It takes on what we last did. That's okay. We're going to stick this up here. We're going to pull this behind it. Move that like that. Move that like that. This is just a quick example. Maybe we'll put it down here. Let's decrease that. That's really high to 5. So time until something. Cool. And we stuck that on the screen. And in fact, why don't we just stick this on the middle of the screen? You can also use these funky little dudes and they'll get everything all lined up for you. So now we got time until something. We'll do that this way. We have our little dude. Let's go grab our nest, which contains all these elements here. We're going to move, we can move this around like this. We're using these controls. You can also click on this and you'll see the box around it, and then you can move it this way. Now obviously time until something is over that. So we're going to move this up here. We're going to move this down here, and we're just going to reorder these layers in here. So now when I move this thing around, it's on top. You can do this. You can click on motion and move it around. You can also click on motion and use these little scalers. And maybe we put that guy right there. Time until something. Now we have our little time until something counter. It's going to go through and count, do everything we want to do, and that's kind of cool. How about that? If we wanted to create this whole thing, I would probably and most likely make this a lot bigger. But that'll work for me. If I wanted to move this entire thing I just created all around the screen or make it smaller, put it up here, again, I would use, without taking away this background, because I might want to make it longer or bigger, I would go grab these two and I would nest them again. I would do a counter with text or whatever you want to call it. Again, we have a nest. Now this thing's all encapsulated. The whole thing's encapsulated into a quote-unquote video. I can move it around. I can scale it down. I can put this thing up here. And there we go. Time until something. And that's how you do these timers. Hopefully this wasn't too long for you, or too fast for you, or too slow for you, or too whatever for you.
I hope that was helpful, and maybe you were able to apply these same techniques in your own video editor. If you were, let me know in the comments below. Also, don't forget, I have free files, assets, sound effects, courses, all sorts of stuff, and I always run discounts on all my courses over at Basic Filmmaker University, so go check it out. I hope that helps. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. And I really wanted to show this dialy spinny thing in Premiere Pro. Let's go over to the editing area and check it out. Okay, the editing area is that way.